Okay. Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And thank you. Okay, Sephora, you put in. Oh, right. So that's to the hosts and panelists. We should be able to send a chat to everyone. But anyway, thank you everyone for being here. So my name is Dr. Gail Gutman. I am an adolescent medicine fellow. I'm a board certified pediatrician. And I'm really excited to be here. I just want to share with you all the impetus for me wanting to put this together was that I was a student many years ago at the University of Wisconsin. And 2 weeks ago, there was a neo-Nazi march on campus. And I reacted very strongly, and I'm very happy to say a lot of us really got together and developed this big support to the students on campus now. But it really made me feel like we needed to do something to address what is happening to many college campuses across the nation and across the globe. So I'm very happy to be here, and I'm going to let everyone else introduce themselves. So Beth, you can go first.
Sorry, I was having an issue with my sound. Hi, everyone. My name's Beth Kahn. I'm a junior at Barnard College. I'm studying neuroscience on the pre-med track. And yeah, I'm from the east side of Manhattan. I went to Ramaz from age 3 to 18. Then I took a gap year in Israel. I studied at a seminary in the Old City. And yeah, now I'm here.
Great. Yael, Bruk, you can go next.
Okay. Hello, my name is Yael. I'm currently a senior at Binghamton University, and I am very excited about doing this talk. So thank you all for being here today.
Great. Greg.
My name is Greg Steinberger. I'm the executive director and CEO at the University of Wisconsin-Madison Hillel Foundation. I've been doing this for 25 years, and I'm really happy to be here and to join Gail and the rest of the team.
Hi, Manya Lazaroff from College Station, Texas. We run together with my husband, we co-direct the Chabad at Texas A&M University. We cater to the students, faculty, and community here locally. We've been involved in this work for 25 years and 17 years at the Texas A&M campus. Really infused and excited about this gathering of just getting together and sharing inspiration, thoughts, strength, and tools. So thanks for having me.
Great. And then Dr. Rollhaus.
Hi, good evening. I'm Dr. Esther Rollhaus. Thank you, Gail, for having me and everyone for having me today. I'm a child, adolescent, and adult psychiatrist, currently in private practice in Riverdale, New York, and also doing telehealth to New York, New Jersey, Connecticut, Pennsylvania, and Florida. Very, very happy to be here.
Great. And then Dr. Ticker, you, just in time.
Yes, apologies for that. I'm Dr. Sari Ticker. I'm a clinical psychologist in Chicago, and I work with adult and family doing telehealth.
Great. So I want to start by hearing from the students on campus. So Yael, will you start us off and share your experience over the last couple months?
Yeah, sure. So as some of you might know, Binghamton University is very well known for having a huge Jewish population and an administration that's very supportive of Jewish students. So since October 7th, it's no surprise that the administration has sent out numerous emails to all students and have attended multiple Jewish events showing support for what we are going through. I'm very thankful for this. I know that other universities have not had this, so I'm very thankful that the administration has been incredibly supportive for the Jewish students. However, despite this, the Binghamton SJP chapter has been very prominent on campus, especially since October 7th. They have had rallies where they chant from the river to the sea. They've held an open forum where one of their own executive board members said that Israel is worse than Nazi Germany. They have partnered with many student organizations and even the Departments of Middle Eastern Affairs at Binghamton. They've also recently partnered with the sociology department and have sent out petitions through the philosophy department here at Binghamton. They have flyers all over campus all the time that have anti-Israel, anti-Semitic propaganda and statements. At the same time, though, Chabad has been very active. They've had like what they call a mitzvah truck in the center of campus almost daily with a giant banner saying Israel needs your mitzvah while playing great Jewish music, handing out food. They also have tefillin there. So now more on like kind of the mental side. Since October 7th, I've experienced almost like hate almost daily in various forms, from flyers to petitions to protests and rallies, as I was explaining. I walk through hallways with posters calling Israel an apartheid, making it kind of hard, honestly, to gather my thoughts as I walk towards a meeting. I sit in class next to a longtime friend who's wearing a green t-shirt after attending a Palestinian rally earlier that day. I sit in executive board meetings of multicultural clubs with a student who posted that Israel deserved what happened on October 7th, and another who co-authored a statement released by another club condemning Israel. I experience such dissonance when I walk in the hallway and consider taking down the posters being part, and because some of them are not chartered by the university, it would not be bad to take down the posters, but it would be, kind of putting on a bad face for the Jews. I also consider being part of a counter protest. Sitting next to friends who seem to call for my people's extermination also seem to give me such, cognitive dissonance of, can I stay friends with these people? Do they know what they're talking about? There are small moments of hope and unity, but unfortunately, the day-to-day experience has made focusing in class, trusting my friends, and even meeting with professors hard sometimes. So I'm excited for this talk and to get to discuss this with other people who have experienced the same or can help us with experiencing this.
Thank you, Yael. It's really very powerful to hear your experience. Beth, I want to hand it to you.
Okay, hi everyone. So I wrote what I'm about to say in the style of a speech just because I wanted to ensure I hit all points that I wanted to say for what has been happening on campus. And we'll give like the whole scope of my Barnard experience from when I started up until now. So you kind of get like the full view of the effect it's had on the Jewish students on campus. So I grew up in a modern Orthodox bubble. My family, school, synagogue, summer camps and programs, and seminary consisted of like-minded individuals sharing a common religion and national history. Given this, I always knew that anti-Semitism existed from my familial and religious history, and upon hearing stories from the news, but I never witnessed anything actually anti-Semitic or anti-Zionistic. Initially at Barnard, I sought diverse connections beyond the Jewish community by befriending those from various cultural and religious backgrounds. To my surprise, I formed deep emotional bonds, specifically with my classmates in my pre-med classes. And initially, I even held a preemptive bias, assuming that others might be inclined towards anti-Semitism. However, as I shared my identity, I discovered that it sparked curiosity and genuine interest, leading to meaningful conversations and dispelling any potential biases. Nowadays, however, many of those friends proudly come into my classes wearing keffiyehs after participating in vibrant pro-Palestinian protests so loud that the noise permeates the classrooms even during lectures. At work, I do research at Columbia Medical Center. My workers share posts on social media condemning the IDF and advocating for an immediate ceasefire and offer justifications for their views to no end when being questioned. At night in the library, I overhear students my age discussing the war, asserting that Israel does not care about their hostages. And when I attempt to prevent this spread of misinformation by challenging their claims, I'm accused of spreading propaganda. Even when I gather the courage to address individuals tearing down posters, the response is to walk away screaming the actual word. I'm not going to say the actual word, but F you, you have no idea what you're talking about. Anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism is everywhere on campus, and it can be emotionally draining, infuriating, and at times create feelings of helplessness and despair. What helps me from losing my morale is remembering that in addition to the other 0.2% of the world, I'm exceptionally fortunate to be born into a nation grounded in the principles of righteousness, morality, and unyielding hope. A nation so close and united that these old friends of mine have been so easily replaced by new Jewish students from Hillel, who I would never have met because of differences in religious practice. A nation so close to the point where other students and I celebrated a 9-year-old Israeli boy held in captivity at the time who we didn't even know his birthday by putting up balloons with his picture all over campus. Ohad Munder even got to see what we did for him last week after his aunt came to speak to us this past Thursday, and we sent her the pictures. A nation whose unity and kindness is seen by others, which is why I even have some of my non-Jewish friends helping us with our initiatives all over campus. The late Rabbi Jonathan Sachs, Zichrono Livracha, in his article, The Birth of Hope, says that there's nothing inevitable or even rational about hope. It cannot be inferred from any facts about the past or present. Those with a tragic sense of life hold that hope is an illusion, a childish fantasy, and that a mature response to our place in the universe is to accept its fundamental meaninglessness and cultivate the stoic virtue of acceptance. Judaism insists otherwise, that the reality that underlies the universe is not deaf to our prayers, blind to our aspirations, indifferent to our existence. We are not wrong to strive to perfect the world, refusing to accept the inevitability of suffering and injustice. And with that, so long as there still exists some type of inherent morality and pursuit of justice in the world, there will always be hope. It is for this reason that despite how hard it may be, I find it my responsibility and privilege to continue fighting against anti-Semitism and anti-Zionism, not just for the Jewish nation in Israel, but for the sanctity and honor of all 1,200 innocent lives that were stolen, the 6 hostages who were brutally killed, 398 of our soldiers who lost their lives to protect us, and the lives of 137 individuals who still remain in captivity. Am hanetzach lo mefachad miderech aruka. The triumphant nation is not afraid of a tumultuous journey.
Thank you, Beth. I just want to take a second before we move on. So the chat is great, and I see that a lot of people are this is kind of stirring up a lot of passion, which is great. I do just want to ask so that you can use the Q&A function to ask questions, and I encourage you to do so. Great. I'm gonna before moving on to our mental health professionals, I want to just ask Greg. I know that you have been doing this for many years, and I'd love to hear your perspective on Judaism on campuses over the years, and what's happening now, and what's different, what's new, but also what's maybe the same.
Thank you, Gail. First of all, I'm totally blown away by Yael and Beth's words here. They speak well beyond their experiences, what they're witnessing and seeing speak well beyond anything that I think I can bring to the table. And I suspect that there is great variety around the country of what a college student's experience is, and what a campus experience is at this moment. And I really hope that it's not the experience that you two are having and that your classmates are having. This is a brutal struggle. And I think that this is a moment that's really different for our Jewish students around the country. I mean, it's for all of us, right? In our own peer groups, in our workplaces, in our communities, but the campuses are not uniform. The problems that they face probably depend as much on geography and the makeup of the communities and the identities that show up there, as do our cities. So I just want to frame that there is not a uniformity. There is probably a real constant unsettling, though, right? There's like within that, there are these degrees, but I think all of us feel and experience the unsettling moments and the worry of what's happening on campus. So in the longer run, I've been in Hillel work almost 30 years, 29 years, 25 at Wisconsin. We've never had a moment like this. We've had other moments that have been uncomfortable. We've had wars, we've had terrible things. We lived through 9/11 and those experiences. And certainly that at the beginning of this was similar. But the polarity we have in our world and the sort of unhinged anti-Semitism and lack of filter is just unique to the moment. Some of it, I think, is completely tied to living in an age of the internet and the rules of the internet, which are so different than the old days of print media and journalism and what can be said and how we hold people accountable. So, I guess I would say, if you sort of looked at these last few months in just a little bit of a timeline, there was an experience that I think people woke up to disbelief, complete trauma. And then as each day passed or week, we experienced new things on campus. And I think that holds true across campuses, right? There was disbelief, there was wondering where your friends and your allies were, there was silence and there was crickets. There were those students who were trying to figure out how to get their feet under them to just show up in the morning or to go to class, or if they wanted to be present. Those who identified as strong Israel supporters or children of Israelis or Israelis, were they going to be forward and present in public about their identities, or were they going to hide? And that ripple, I think, happened to everybody. Young people who may not have thought much about their relationship to Israel suddenly are doom scrolling and depressed or sad or wondering who to interact with. And as each week passed, they had these moments that we just heard these two students talk about, right? Like something new in the classroom is a person dressed in support of the Palestinians. Something new is watching someone tear down posters put up on campus. This sort of intensity of back and forth that the campuses were experiencing. And I think that really does hold true. Public, private, small, large, giant Jewish community, very small Jewish community. And depending on where we were, we also saw faculty starting to speak poorly or administrations not knowing how to respond. And I think as a community, we also weren't prepared. I mean, we were like, deer in the headlights. How could this be happening? What do we do about it? Where are our friends? Certainly in the schools, the New York schools we just heard about, I think my colleagues were their heads were spinning that this is what was happening after all these years of relationship building. So, I think what that has led to is this varied experience of anxiety and fear and a sense of foreboding for the future. Like, I would be the first to tell you, and this is Wisconsin students, so we've had an extraordinarily intense time, but a different kind of intense time than what we just heard about. So there's a sense that from the left and from the right, we're recognizing anti-Semitism, that there is a feeling of compartmentalism. Like now, a few weeks in, you can live your best life. You can do what you do socially or intellectually, and you're suddenly thrown for a massive spill. And I think that volatility is what we're seeing, and it's part of, I hope, what this session's about. How do we cope with those things? The last thing I'll say for now is I think that we as a community are also part of this very difficult time for our young people, that moms and dads are hundreds of, at least in our case, often hundreds of miles away. They have worries that may be very much specific to the location in which they live or the friends and experiences that they are having, which may not actually match up to what's happening to their child at the University of Miami or Texas or Florida or, Wisconsin. And all of us, students and parents and alumni, are acting on emotion, and we have lost a certain sense of our thoughtfulness, and we are also acting in social media. I can tell you as a Hillel professional, that makes my job really hard. There's a lot of joy in it, and it makes it really hard. So there's always something coming up, and sometimes there's a cognitive dissonance between what the child is saying and what the parent is saying, or what they want. One's calling the police and one's not. One's telling me, my parents are saying this, and now I'm worried, and now all these people are doing something, but I don't want them to do that. So, these are just examples. They're just all over the map. And I think we are learning what a new normal is with each day. And we don't have the tools for the resilience we need. We don't have enough of the staffing on our campuses. And a large part of, I think, the work of Hillel's and Jewish community relations councils and rabbis is also accountability. And we're spending a lot of time with our university administrators trying to point out what is happening, what is their responsibility, how do we hold values and truths and values and truths that might not always coincide with each other in the same place. So that doesn't mean First Amendment and diversity and free speech. It also means sort of decency and student principles and codes of conduct and civility and what trumps what. This is extraordinarily messy for us. And it's something that I think, so I'll just leave it there. But I think that this is really one of the biggest challenges, at least for public universities in the country. I think for private universities, it's a different challenge. I'll just say quickly that on one hand, private universities have more ability to make decisions on those things. They can set rules. And yet, making that big effort to set those rules is a big lift that they're not comfortable with and that they're not used to. And what we're seeing now is all of our energy and forces putting pressure on these things in all sorts of different directions as it settles itself up. So there can be more on that in the discussion later, but this is really hard stuff, I think, for universities, and we're seeing people just scrambling, sometimes well and sometimes terribly.
Yeah, thank you. So with that, I'm going to, I think the purpose from this talk and what I want most of all to accomplish is to really give students and parents tools and some tools to use, and also solace to know that we are here together, but that we are also resilient together. And Manya is going to speak about that later. But for now, I want to pass the stage to Dr. Ticker and Dr. Rollhaus, and I want to hear from mental health professionals about, what, having heard everything that we just heard and kind of grasping the reality of what it means to be a college student right now and what it means to be a caretaker, a parent, a support system of someone on a college campus. This is very heavy. And I want to hear from the two of you, what are ways to kind of react to this and to approach it?
Yes, this is incredibly heavy. And I wish that we had all the time in the world to be able to start tackling some of the complexity here, or even a fraction of the complexity, and to begin to start thinking about how we're going to cope as individuals and as a community, as college professionals, as college students, as parents. How do we respond to this? And Dr. Ticker and I, when we were preparing for the lecture, we want to split it up into a couple of themes. One is understanding what trauma is, right? We talked about cognitive dissonance, trauma, anxiety. These are all words that get thrown around. And I want to go back to really understand what trauma is now and in the context of the Holocaust and intergenerational trauma. We're going to talk a little bit about some concrete techniques that people can use in order to ground, in order to remind themselves to stay safe, that they are safe in their moment. And we're going to talk about that as well. And then takeaways. We want it to be very practical for people, that they can walk away with something that gives them more empowerment, that makes them feel a little bit more in control, safer. So starting with trauma, in brief, it's an event that is perceived as overwhelming coping mechanisms. It is something that is absolutely overwhelming by definition, but it's not something that people usually cope with. It's something much more that overwhelms our nervous system. And just backing up on a physiological basis, the nervous system, it's divided into fight and flight and rest and digest. And the reason we're going back to physiology is because that's important in understanding what's going on in our bodies and our minds and ways to cope by balancing those two concepts. So when we talk about fight or flight, that's what our body does when we're in stress, when we are threatened, when there's a perceived or actual threat to us. And so if you think about what a body needs to do, and this is adaptive, this is by years of evolution, our bodies are able to respond to stress appropriately to keep us safe. And so what that looks like is often heart racing, energy to the muscles, right? Blood away from digestion, right? We're basically mobilizing our bodies to respond. right? Either fight, run away, freeze. They're all adaptive responses to stress and trauma that overwhelms us. Most of our time, fortunately, is not spent in fight or flight. It's in rest and digest. That's where most of us feel most comfortable when we're in the absence of threat. And so that's where we thrive. That's where we do our activities of daily living. We break down our nutrients. We, breathe, grow. Those are all the things that we do, right, on a regular basis. And so I say that the rest and digest is to thrive, and the fight or flight is to survive. And what's going on here is that there's a real call of danger, a real perception of danger, an actual danger that's demanding a lot from our nervous systems. That's demanding us to fight or flight, or to be flooded on a constant basis, to be hyper alert, hyper aroused, to not be able to relax, to not be able to concentrate, to not be able to go on to our, thriving college experiences, right? There's a fight, and there's an arousal there. And while this is adaptive at times, right, especially when we're trying to escape a danger, it's exhausting. Our bodies are not meant to be in fight or flight for this long. And the extent of challenges that college students are facing is constant bombardment, as Yael said, walking through the halls, right? All of a sudden shifting paradigms, trying to study for pre-medical science classes while sitting next to a person whose shirt suggests danger to her, right? It's not just political, it's very personal, and it feels very unsafe. And so people are responding to these cues with tremendous amount of nervous system activation. And the question is, how can we regulate it? We can't ignore it. We can't ignore it. Our body is telling us that we need to activate. It's adaptive, like I said, but we can't live in it, can't function in it. And so Dr. Ticker is going to talk a little bit about what we can do to balance this.
Right, thank you for that. For this next portion, I want to emphasize that it is for both students and your support systems, your families, your communities. I want to emphasize there are no wrong or right feelings. There are more than one that come up at once. Sometimes they may feel conflicting. Most important, I want to make sure that we can all be true to our own experience and know that feelings are fluid and ever changing, which, to your point, is exhausting and draining at this time. And so to start, I wanted just to highlight some examples of some of the feelings that have come up with patients of mine, and also echo what the students had to say. Based on this foundation of trauma, we think of fear, in the immediate and the long term. Am I in immediate danger walking to my class or going to meet a friend for dinner? Or what does this mean for my community in the long term? Again, that fear is really keeping us in that fight or flight longer than our bodies are really supposed to be there, really draining. We may also experience anger, whether it's something we see scrolling on our phones or reading a headline. Misinformation that's being spread can cause a lot of anger. Keeping in mind that these experiences of emotion are both in the body, are both physical, sometimes more physical for some versus others, but are also in our thoughts and kind of the tone that we experience. One that I want to highlight in particular, because this one has come up a lot in my work, is this feeling of guilt. I should have gone to that rally. I really needed to study, and I went to the library, and I feel so guilty. I didn't go and support my community. Or I went to that yoga class because I really needed to center myself. I feel like I'm not doing my job. I want to emphasize your needs are most important, and only you can really determine what those are. I also want to highlight feeling overwhelmed or even numb. Numbness is a big one that I think we often forget, especially when we're on this overload and constantly being inundated with information and fear and threat, that sometimes we may feel pretty numb. And that can lead to distraction in our classes and our day-to-day. So with that, as they say, it is okay not to be okay. And we encourage you to be mindful in assessing where you are and what your needs are. And what that means is use mental health professionals as a resource, whether that's on campus or virtual. We are living in a time where these services are more accessible than ever before. And I really encourage that. Especially, I encourage reaching out for services or to speak with a professional if you feel like it is having a significant impact in your day-to-day, meaning I can't go to class, I can't study or focus, I can't talk to my friends or socialize, I'm having trouble sleeping. Those day-to-day things are really those key signs to monitor and track as you go. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about some of those tools. And again, when we were preparing for this lecture, we really want to emphasize there is no ABC, do this, and you will feel zen. No, doesn't work that easily. If it did, I would not have a job, right? And so I wanted to give some examples instead of how to take your body from that fight or flight system and take it into that rest and digest, where we really need to be for the majority of time. And we're having trouble right now doing that on our own. And so I know everyone says take a breath, but let me just walk you through a little bit about why that's important. If we take a deep breath, what that does is it tells our body we're not in threat. Right? If we take a breath, we get more oxygen to our muscles can relax, less tension leads to more relaxation, et cetera, et cetera. Again, this is a temporary relief for your body from fight or flight. We can also do movement. This can be anything from a walk to cardio to blasting music in your room and doing a silly dance, jumping up and down, any kind of movement, again, to get your body out of that fight or flight. I'll mention a few more. Our bodies respond to the experience of cold water, shocks the system out of that fight or flight. And so for some, that's rinsing your hands with really cold water, splashing your face. If you're really brave, jumping into a cold bath or cold shower. Again, really, really helpful for your body to have that break. And then the last one that I thought maybe in your own seats, in your own homes right now, you can do as I walk you through it, is what I call a 5-4-3-2-1, which is essentially a tool to use to help feel grounded when you feel like your mind is taking you to all sorts of places. You either need to focus on your schoolwork, to get to sleep, to you need to be somewhere else, and you're overwhelmed by your thoughts. And so 5-4-3-2-1 represents our 5 senses. If we can pay attention to our 5 senses in the moment, our brain cannot at the very same time focus on something else. Can it ping pong? Absolutely, as it will, as mine does. But it takes that practice to focus us on the present. So as I'm walking you through it, please feel free to try it at home. Thinking of 5 things that you currently feel. Some examples for me: the chair underneath me, my feet on my footrest, my hands on my desk. All things that I really don't pay attention to, but thinking about bring me back to this room. 4 things that you can see. I see all of you. I see my lamp. I see my notepad, right? And you can continue with that. Moving on as well to your other senses, to smell, to taste, and things you can hear, right? I encourage you to do that at all moments of the day: folding laundry, sitting at a red light, taking a shower. Give your body that opportunity to take a break. And the last thing I will mention before I pass it over is I also strongly encourage to monitor social media use. It's important to have a balance between staying informed, right? We need to follow what's going on. We need to be aware, especially if it involves our community in the immediate. And we all know when we get to that point when we've really crossed a line of it becomes overwhelming and our bodies can't tolerate that intensity. It's not helpful for us anymore. So I encourage you, whether that's your own boundary that you set or using apps, I'm all for using technology to make these things easier, to really limit your social media use and news, looking to the news in a way that's helpful versus not helpful. All right, that is it for me. I will stop there. But if you want to close us out, Dr. Rollhaus.
And Dr. Ticker, as you were talking, I was feeling myself get more and more relaxed. They work, right? And there's an enormity of the situation that goes so much broader than coping skills, right? And we're balancing this dichotomy, right? They're both true. There are real problems that we need to activate ourselves for, that fight or flight has a tremendous place in what we're going through now in the wake of October 7th and with all the anti-Semitism. And as Dr. Ticker said, if that is all consuming, you can't function, you can't continue, right? And so these skills are helpful in the moment to ground you, to get back to an acknowledgement of physical safety, of your hands on your desk, your feet on the ground, so that you can think, have rational thought about what the best way to respond to these safety issues are. I want to acknowledge two limitations in terms of finding mental health professionals, which is a limitation of expertise and wondering about mental health professionals' own biases in this circumstance. Those are two very important questions that I think are coming up for our students and are limiting access to an already strained mental health system, especially college mental health. So those are two issues that I just want to acknowledge as well, just to problematize it even further. There's a lot more to say about this, and I want to follow Beth's example of giving us a little bit of hope also. This is a very bleak and scary time. And for some people, it's been galvanizing. For some people, it's been able to give them purpose, to give them mission. Not that they asked for this, not that they wanted or needed this, but it actually reaffirms a sense of identity and a sense of purpose and a sense of community. And bridging together with people who are like-minded and who are supportive can be very helpful. And I know with break coming up, a lot of college students are coming back to their families of origin. And this is a time for healing, for intergenerational healing, for families to be able to support their kids, whether they talk about it or not. Sometimes you have to know whether that's going to be advantageous or whether that's going to be balked at, right? And towing that line to some extent. But this is an opportunity for connection. Anti-Semitism isn't new. It's happened to your parents also. They have their own experiences with this. And so having a dialogue between the generations can be incredibly grounding as well. And so I'll take it back to you, Dr. Gutman, and maybe to deepen the conversation a little bit more.
Yeah, thank you. So first of all, thank you, Dr. Rollhaus and Dr. Ticker. You know, a lot of the questions that have been coming in were really answered in what you said. So I really appreciate that, and I think everyone else does as well. And we'll get more questions later. Everyone, please do feel free to utilize the Q&A. You know, this is a really good segue to Manya, who it's very important to me to have on this talk people like Manya and like Greg, who have been on campus over the years and have seen the way that things have gone down. And I, might have more like what I would imagine to be a bird's eye view of everything that's happening. Manya spoke to me about resilience that I want to let her share with all of us because I think it was really important. But Manya, also, I want to hear from you. You have this role on campus as a Chabad Rebbitzin and as a director of Jewish life on campus, and I think one of the great roles of one of your great roles is really showing students how to continue to be proudly Jewish on campus, and also, yours, Greg, of course. But and I want to hear from you how what that means to you and how you see students expressing that, and then hopefully that I can kind of hand it back to the students on the screen and hear how that resonates with them.
So thank you so much for this opportunity again. I've been listening to everybody's voices, and I feel like there's such value in everyone coming together and the unique perspectives. I feel like it's been touched upon extensively to really just check in with yourself. And when a student comes to me, and we've dealt since October 7th with students, a lot of Israeli students whose families are all called up. My own brother-in-law is in Gaza currently for his, I think, third round. And so we're all kind of carrying a lot. And even if we're going around our day-to-day life, whether it's school, home, academics, social, our parents, navigating so many things, we're all carrying a tremendous amount. I know for me, I personally have not slept one solid night since October 7th. And I know that I'm not the only one, right? So I think checking in with yourself is like a huge thing, because the range of emotions, as both doctors shared, is so valid. It's going to vacillate, and it's not going to look consistent, and it's not going to make sense, right? But at one line that really sticks with me that I find so powerful for myself, and anything I'm sharing is stuff that I'm, experiencing, lived experiences, and I'm walking this road with our students. As I have my own family in Israel, my own son went back to yeshiva in Israel. Like, we sent him back in the middle of this, and people are like, you're crazy, right? So I'm walking the road with everyone, because I am also coming from a place where generations before me, raised on stories of pogroms and generational trauma, and that we actually physically, and it's neurological, we're absorbing, we're carrying that. So all of this is bringing all of that to the surface, and we're trying to navigate. My grandmother in the shtetl didn't have social media. She had a lot of other things she was carrying, but she didn't have that. So first, one line that I really keep going back to is a line from the Baal Shem Tov, and he says, "B'makom shemachshavto shel adam, sham hu nimtza." When you check in with yourself, wherever your mindset is, that's where you are. Now, 1 second, Manya, there are negative moments, there are intense moments. I'm carrying a lot. We heard from Yael, we heard from Beth, tremendous, tremendous struggles to just get through the day-to-day. So what are you saying? I'm doomed to just be stuck in that? But I think that is such an empowering line, because it's a reminder to us that you and I have the ability to try to shift our mindset to a place that we can move forward. And I think, Dr. Esther, Dr. Rollhaus, you mentioned something that really, not knowing that you were going to say this, it's something that I really have been focusing on with our students, is this is not a new story for us. It's not. And I'm going to share a personal story. I'm, thank God, the mother of 8 children ranging from 23 to 8 months old. And I remember one of my young children really was struggling with, Mommy, why in every generation are they trying to kill us? It's a real question. The child was 6. What do you answer a 6-year-old who's asking an existential question that we're all asking? And I just looked at him and I just said to him, how is it possible that we've been around in every generation? How is it possible? And I think there's something so much that when we tap into our essence of who we are, our identity, we are an eternal people. If you look through these parshiot that we're reading currently at these moments, when we look and tap into the messages from these stories of Avraham, Yitzchak, Yaakov, Sarah, Rivka, Rachel, Leah, when you tap into their stories, it's all laid out there. We are an eternal people. We are not going away. And I keep saying to our students, this is not the first group of people who are going to try. Most of them turned into a holiday and a pastry. So and I know it sounds like I'm making light of it. I'm not. I'm born with the same stories. Those were my bedtime stories too. I have those same gut reaction, the same feelings of feeling immobilized. And yet that is not the end of our story. Our story is constantly, Mark Twain asks this question, right? Concerning the Jews, the Babylonians, the Persians, the Egyptians, everyone rose, great splendor. They messed with the Jews and they're gone. So we have to remind ourselves we come from a place, yes, with generational trauma, but with that, we inherited generational resilience. We are an eternal people. And I tell my students, and anyone we have these conversations, is walk tall, walk with pride. You are a source of light. We have a Torah that gives us a moral compass that is consistent through the generation, that keeps us aligned, that keeps us anchored, that keeps us secure. We have a long line of heroes, from our soldiers currently in Gaza, to the wives supporting the home front, to what you see, this mass, united, powerful energy of light. This is not a new story for us. And with the time of Mashiach, yes, we will enter an era of peace, and we will not have to constantly prove who we are. But we need to know at our core, on a soul level, we are an eternal people. We hail from a long line of wonderful people who've contributed to the world, to society. Literally, God says to Jacob, your nations will be spread around the world, and wherever they go, and all the nations will be blessed through them. You will bring blessing. So we must remember that. We must keep that front and center. And I say this to the parents, I say this to the students, and I say this to myself and my own children. Walk proud. My son is the only kid in the entire city walking with a yarmulke. What does that mean? He means to walk proud and confident and comfortable in who he is as a Jew. You know, Lord Rabbi Dr. Jonathan Sachs, right, says non-Jews respect Jews who respect Judaism. I think it's a really powerful thing for us to tap into our identity with confidence. But what do we do about that? What do we do about this? Because it doesn't feel like it. I know, Beth, Yael, what you're describing, I take a lot of actually our students actually feel pretty safe in Texas. They've had a lot of support from the university. There hasn't been tremendous resistance on campus and toxicity on campus. University really is keeping that in check, and I respect that tremendously, and we're very grateful. And as Greg mentioned, we've been working behind the scenes with the university consistently since, this horrific day. But what I think is that we know what we're going through and we know what we're carrying, but we have to walk with confidence, and then we have to ask ourselves, now what? And I think we got incredible tips from, breathing. I know myself, the techniques of breathing and grounding and all of that are tremendous. I teach it to my young children. My 2-year-old knows to take a big breath to calm herself down, right? And it's huge. It's amazing. So those are really, really powerful. But what I have learned as a Chabad Chassid is, in every single conflict or challenge the Jewish nation experienced under Lubavitch Rebbe's leadership, was now what? Channel it into action. It's something we helped our students do, whether it's a bake sale, and we're not talking about going and pulling down posters that may be too intense for a lot of people. That's an experience that, if that's not for you, that's not for me. I know I don't have that in me. For whatever reason, we can have a discussion, psychoanalyze, maybe the doctors can help. But at the end of the day, I know that that's not my way to combat darkness. And you cannot beat darkness with a stick. You just bring in the light. So we're the light. We have so much light within us. And so when we channel our actions into acts of goodness and kindness, into mitzvot. So for our students, it was a beautiful, peaceful prayer and walk on campus that was met with respect from all the community on campus. We create, baked goods and sent money to the communities and the families affected and the front lines. We boys walking on campus and helping each other put on tefillin, not my husband and myself, the boys themselves, and saying, no, let's be proud, let's walk proud, let's be Jewish, let's do what we can. I have seen such an ignition of the Jewish neshama, kids who for 4 years did not do a single thing connected to the community because that was not what they needed. And suddenly they're knocking down the door saying, I need my family, I need my community. And it's tapping into an essence of who we are. So I think that for all of us, we can channel our action into, and I'm sure the doctors can tell us why that's so productive, but channel some of that toxic energy into action that brings light into the world. And there's so many ways to do that. There's no, I'm sure with Beth, Yael, and Greg, and these great minds, we could sit together and come up with a whole list of ways to bring light into the world, but there's no shortage of what we can do. And to me, I think that when we are just stuck, aside from all the incredible techniques that we've just heard, I think when we think of what light can I bring to someone else, I think that does so much for us. I know it does so much for me. And that's why I'm sharing this perspective and this mindset. We're not going anywhere. It's not because people haven't tried. Stand tall, stand proud. And remember, Am Yisrael Chai, we're here. So those are my thoughts. And passing the mic back.
Thank you, Manya, and you're getting rave reviews in the chat. So thank you. You're really very inspiring and encouraging. And I think I speak for a lot of the people here when I say that we really appreciate that. One of the things, and we're going to get to the Q&A portion soon, and I want that to be, I don't want to keep you guys here all night. But one of the things that to me, especially as an adolescent medicine doctor, was really important is that, I think we're talking a lot about things that all of us across the Jewish people, across our nation are experiencing, but there are things that are specific to college campuses. Specifically, and I almost get emotional talking about it, but hopefully I'll keep it together. You students, especially freshmen, sophomores, you're away from your parents for the longest amount of time, maybe ever, probably ever. And especially, we just had Thanksgiving, whatever you call it, vacation. And one of the things that I was really thinking about was I was remembering my own experience with that. And the idea of like, you go home for 5 days or whatever it is, and you're back in this comforting area. And then you have to leave the comfort of your home, and you have to go back to what is fun. It's college, but it's not home. And I want to hear from you, from either Yael or Beth or both of you, what can you take out of this? How can you apply these things to kind of give yourself comfort, a home-like comfort? And how can you use what we're talking about to take away any homesickness, that whether or not you feel it, but there are college students that feel it, I guarantee you. And I want to address that. So if one of you has any ideas about that, I'd love to hear. And if not, I bet that.
Yeah, I don't mind taking this.
Okay, good.
So, I think a lot of what the other panelists spoke about tonight kind of speaks to me in terms of like homeness and familiarity. I think surrounding yourself in a community, even if you've never been part of the community before, is a hugely important aspect of feeling more at home in your community. I know, for example, myself, like when I go to these club meetings or I go to class, no one can pronounce my name. And I try to tell them, but I'm always Yael or Yael. But then when I go to Chabad or Hillel, I'm surrounded by people who I barely even have to introduce myself to them. They all know me. They all know I'm Yael. They all know who I am. They know my personality. They all know Hanukkah is coming. I'm not asked about what my Christmas break plans are because, I think that a huge part of coping for me was just bringing myself back into the community and finding myself like giving back to the community as well. So finding more service things, even if they're not related to Israel, just giving to my community however I can, gave me a real sense of like warmth and belonging, familiarity. And I'm sure it helped other people too who were struggling because of, let's say, the service projects I was doing. Another thing that I found really helped me, which is kind of similar to what Manya was saying, was to feel strong in my identity. I used to not care if people called me Yael or whatever, but now I'm like, no, my name is Yael. I'm Jewish. I'm Israeli. Like, I don't care how you'll think of me. I want you to pronounce my name correctly. And I want you to know who I am. And like, I'm not afraid of it. Of course, with safety precautions and all that, if I feel unsafe in a situation, I'll kind of back off a little bit. But I think it's important that we kind of stop hiding our identity as Jews on campus. Binghamton is over a third Jewish, but I don't see that. And I think it's important now to show others to, be strong and safe in your Judaism. And if you see other Jews who are like kind of struggling with that, to help them out, to show them, hey, I'm wearing my Magen David out today. You can too. Or, hey, I'm showing people how to pronounce a Hebrew name. You can too. I'm admitting that it's a Hebrew name. You can also do that, kind of being strong on campus, but also very within the community and giving back to the campus as well has been very helpful for me.
That's really beautiful. Thank you, Yael. and I hope I pronounced, no, I'm just kidding. Anyway, all right, I'm going to, unless anybody has anything pressing that has not been brought up yet, I'm gonna move to the Q&A just because we have a lot of great questions coming in, and I think it's important to address them. Does anybody, before I do that, has anybody had an urge to share something to the conversation that can't go unsaid? Awesome. So actually, the first question I'm going to address to Greg because of something very important that he said to us. So someone says, how do we send our children to college campuses when our kids are safe at home and they only hear about anti-Semitic incidents? And how do we send them out to live with this hatred? And the person writing this has a child who's a high school senior. And I just want to say that Greg very wisely pointed out last week when we were preparing for this, that for many, many years, many Jews have gone to college campuses. So we got to deal with this. And I'm going to let you take it from there.
Thank you. I think it's a great question. And we're getting a lot of this. I mean, I'm getting a lot of it. I'm also getting calls. People say, is it safe for my kids? Should they apply to your school? They can't apply to this. I'm not allowing them to apply to this school. They can only apply to this school. Or I can see in various parent groups that I'm in, I can't believe this is happening and that nobody's done, taken action against someone or something, and I'm going to pull my child out of school. And, I don't actually know what happens in that conversation between the child and their parent. I imagine maybe it doesn't happen. We just see it in social media. At least I hope that's the case. But these are, I said before, people are acting with emotion on their sleeve and they're worrying. Homeschooling for college doesn't seem to me like a great idea. And every campus in the country is going to have some challenges. If we go looking for anti-Semitism, we're certainly going to find it. And if we don't look, sometimes it's going to smack us in the face. So I think that there's a question a little bit about what is general campus climate? What does accountability look like? Do we think places are making reasonable efforts at protecting our children, protecting all children, dealing with extraordinarily complex situations that university chancellors and presidents are facing in a very fraught country? I mean, this isn't new. In that sense, what Manya said is fully true. It's true anyway, but like what's happening on campus goes back now, maybe 8 or 10 years. We're really in this moment where the campuses are under assault. So I think the question is, for me, I have 3 daughters, 2 still in school, one finishing graduate school and one who's a freshman here at Wisconsin. I have no question about sending them off to college. I think generally they haven't had the experiences that at the 2 schools that Yael and Beth are at, they've had, we've witnessed, might have been at public universities. They've had some ugly things happen. They're learning to adult. They're learning resilience. Their minds are probably emotionally younger than 2 decades before of college students in some ways with dealing with some of these things. And they're dealing with a lot more things, right? Everybody has a phone in their pocket, which means 24/7, they have something happening that they have to emotionally consume. The rules of sort of our society are changing. So I would say we have to do, if we're preparing ourselves and our children for college, we have to prepare them for civics. We have to prepare them for Jewish life. We have to prepare them for Judaism and the diversity within Judaism. We have to exhibit a more wild sense of curiosity. And we have to, I hate to say it, it's not a callous thing, but we have to grow thicker skin. Not that we should ever give up who we are and what our beliefs are and what's true, but we have to help our children find ways to recognize they're going into a world that isn't our backyard in our house. And that part of being in that world and making a difference, part of being that light, is to engage dramatically with it. So we have a choice to close in or to go out. And then we have some ideas about what going out looks like. it's not going to be perfect. It's not going to be easy. But I would tell you, my experience, 25 years of meeting college applicants, is they think about other things often about why they want to go to college. It's like the call of, the couple is about to get married and they don't have a rabbi yet. And the rabbi gets the last call to start to have conversations about their lives and what does it mean to live together. So there's a part here that, like, what does it look like for a 17 or 18-year-old to start really thinking about what's important in college for things that they've never experienced before? And what does it look like for mom and dad to think about in terms of what does it mean to let them go? And how do we do this? Because we're tethered to our children with our phones in ways we have never, our parents' generation, I'll speak for myself, was not tethered to their children. So I think that these are hard things, but I would be hard pressed to say college is a bad place for Jews in America. There are some colleges that may be true. There may be moments that is actually happening. But I think that university has been really good to the Jewish community, as has American democracy, right? Like, we have thrived in this democracy, and we should be investing in those tools and investing in our colleges that way to make them better.
Great.
Can I just add a point to that? Because I think it's really important as a student, because that comes up a lot. When kids from my former high school ask me, should they apply to Barnard? Should they apply to Columbia, given everything that's going on and, the climate in which things look like they're going. And so a bunch of my friends and I are taking this really hard course, and we have a tutor, we share a tutor, and she's Jewish. And unfortunately, one of her cousins was initially thought to have been taken hostage, and then unfortunately was thought to have been murdered. And she told us that once when we were really low, when we were like, this is just getting too much with school, with everything going on. And she said to us, you guys just need to keep going. You guys just need to keep fighting. We can't let them win. We can't. A win for any of you guys is a win for all of the Jewish people. You really just need to keep moving forward. And it was very, very inspiring. And it really, given what she's going through and given what she's going through and her ability to find hope and inspire us. And she's right. We can't let them win. And even more so, I'd say not to send your children to a school where there's no Jews and they're going to be one of a handful, but where there is somewhat of a Jewish community. I think it's specifically important to send your children there because we can't let them win. And that is letting them win. And also just from Jewish history and even just seeing how my classmates interact with me now, it seems as though there's two perceptions of a Jew. There's the one perception that looks at Jews as being so successful and they're kind of seeping with jealousy. And then there's the other side that looks at Jews as being weak and gross. And we can't let them think of us as weak. We have to just keep pushing. And we have to, as Manya said, we have to stand up with our heads held high, and we have to show them that they cannot treat us like that and that we will not back down. That's what has kept us here till this day. That is what's going to keep us going. And we're not going to let these students, these uneducated students, tell us otherwise or think otherwise.
Great. Thank you. Okay. So, so someone wrote, I was pushed out of a social circle because I'm Jewish / I'm pro-Israel. How can we deal with the hurt feelings that come with this? So, I think anyone here would be a great person to ask. I want to ask Yael, as someone who is on campus, who might be, and this was something that's come out that I think you had mentioned, this idea, how do I deal with the fact that maybe you're pushed out of a group, or maybe the people that you used to do all of your study groups with are pro-Hamas, and you just feel like you totally can't trust them anymore. So have you had an experience with this, Yael, and how have you approached it?
Yeah, so I'll say that this experience is really, really tough. And I mean, this person asked anonymously, but I understand what you're going through. And I understand that it is so hard to be in that situation and to feel that way. So just let yourself, I guess, feel the hurt. Like, don't try to push it down and, think otherwise. Like, let yourself understand that it wasn't your fault, that they're seeing you incorrectly. If you really feel like these are relationships that you wanted to sustain or you still want to sustain, like I have felt with a few friends of mine, try to talk to them more on a personal level, on an individual level, because chances are they are not looking at you the same way they're looking at the state of Israel. They will not go up to you and say, I think that you are blank because Israel is blank. They don't think that overall, in general, they don't think that you are the one causing, let's say, an apartheid or a genocide. They think that's happening. And whether you support the apartheid is not something that should affect your friendship. I think if you talk about it more of like, what you said hurt me because X, or, for example, someone said that I'm close with that Israel deserved what happened on October 7th. And I was like, I can't be friends with this person anymore. And I don't see why she would want to be friends with me. But I spoke to her and I said, personally, on a personal level, it hurts me for you to say that I deserve that. And she said, oh, no, I don't think you do. I think Israelis do. And I said, what do you think I am? And then it was a little awkward, I'll be honest, but it led the way to a more personal conversation that did not have to be political. We kind of ended it there and decided, hey, if we want to maintain this friendship that we've valued for years now, let's keep politics on the side. If you ever have a question or you see a news article and you're like, oh my gosh, how did Israel do X? You can ask me and we could talk about it. But in terms of our friendship, since we both really value what we have, let's put that aside and see each other as people. And that's really helped me get through it.
Great. Thank you. That's great. That was a great question. And I really appreciate that answer. So someone wrote a really important question, kind of two questions in one, saying we're focusing here on anti-Semitism on college campuses. I'm wondering about the big picture, and this has kind of been echoing throughout other questions, that the idea that this isn't new, but also what does this mean globally, and what does it mean today that there are students, college students, who are becoming educated and they're doing things that are very scary to us, and they're possibly going to be in positions of power in 1 year, 2 years, however many, 10 years, and so what does that mean about how, like, our future? And Manya, I'm wondering, having been around the block and known a lot of college graduates, I'm wondering if you can kind of comment on that.
So, it's an interesting question, because I find that a lot of times when, let's say, a student will encounter something, and we're at a campus where we're really a minority. We are maybe 500 Jews out of 73,000 at Texas A&M University. So do the math. I'm not a mathematician. That's a very small number. And over the years, a lot of the students have encountered, let's take pre-October 7th, right? Encountered a tremendous amount of ignorance. Like, you're Jewish, wear your horns, or like you would be like, oh my gosh, that came out of someone's mouth. And really often what we've tried to help students are like, a student's like, oh my gosh, we're not going to be in heaven together because you're not going to heaven because you don't believe in whatever. So students, Jewish kids, it shakes them to their core. Like, what, like Yael was saying, like, wait, this is me. Like, what are you? We're friends, or we're sorority sisters. And why do you see me this way, especially since this event? And one of the things my husband and I really work to help students do is, first of all, let's see how we can understand this and depersonalize it. And of course, it feels so personal, but as soon as you can understand that very often it's a lot of ignorance, a tremendous amount of ignorance, right? And so we have a lot of ways to proactively take steps. I'm not going to, combat's a very strong word, but combat that ignorance. With not cowering and with being confident, with being strong. And then there are systems, like when I see a student witnesses something on our, school's, let's say, TikTok account that feels anti-Semitic or toxic or uncomfortable, what do we do about it? And so there are means, there are measures, there's a legal system where, as Greg mentioned, we're living in a Medina Shel Chesed. We're living in a country, a democracy for Jews has been so hospitable and wonderful for so many years. And we're proud Americans, and we're grateful that when our ancestors came here, they're welcomed with, this who America is. Now, are we concerned about the future? You know, there was a trend like, will you hide me? Yeah, of course we're concerned about the future. We know where rhetoric and anti-Semitism and negativity can lead. We've seen this story before. But I think that when we can look at those people who are not posting toxic things on social media, you know, but we can look at people who are neutral or maybe ignorant or maybe just, and those are the people that we can move the needle with, that we can educate. We hosted an event for a Greek life that was not Jewish. It was open Q&A with us too. And it was planned before this event. But the last quarter of the event was answering Israel. And I truly feel that at the end of the night, there were 30 new allies on our campus because it was through open, respectful dialogue. It was not taking on, you know, the biggest perpetrator. Though, yes, there are means, there are systems, like if there's something happens in the university, who do you go to? How do we follow up? How do we make sure that this is not acceptable, that there is, you know, whether it's legal action, whether it's moral action, whether it's ramifications, of course, we have to follow protocol to help us, whether it's in the workplace. I've had, you know, a young alum call, like, this is what I'm dealing with in the workplace. Well, you know, you have HR, we have systems that we have to follow through. So we're not like just not empowered and sitting there, you know, just like frozen. So we always try to stop, depersonalize, what means can I take? And then let me look around in my circle and see who can I move to a place through respectful dialogue. I had one of my students who was, as Yael described, I heard one of my students say she had a friend, they were in the same class, the same projects, you know, Palestinian, and there was this tension, right? And no one said anything. So that was almost worse. And like, do I block her? Do I, you know, how do I handle this? How does she handle this? And at one point, the girl in our, because we worked through this together, she said, I went over to her and I said, how is your family? And the Palestinian girl was shocked. She said, they're scared, but they're alive. And then the Palestinian girl looked and said, do you have family? She said, yes, a lot. And she said, and how is your family? And she said, you know, a lot of them have been called up and it's scary. And there's humanity. And they gave each other a big hug. And they're not going to probably talk about it too much, right? But they saw the soul and the humanity. And at the end of the day, we're all created in the image of God. We're all here for a reason. And we have to remember that if we can find those neutral people and move them to a place through dialogue, they could have ignored each other for the rest of the year, had toxic things, blocked each other. Who knows what could have gone? But they saw the soul and the humanity in each other and light, because we are people with light.
Beautiful. Thank you. We have a few questions that I want to pose to either Dr. Ticker or Dr. Rollhaus that are kind of along the lines of like, how do I find a mental health professional and trust that they like Israel, that they like Jews? You know, I either of you can really take this one, but I want to ask that. But then I also want to ask, you know, I'm sure that there are things that that for whatever reason, well, I'll just take, my instinct would be to say that there are certain things that you can be a fabulous mental health professional and not see eye to eye with someone. So I wanted to kind of hear your thoughts on that.
I can start there. I have a lot of thoughts about this, and something I've been thinking about a lot, especially in a lot of the Facebook groups that I'm a part of and mental health communities that are bringing problems with colleagues or raising problems with colleagues who are saying very problematic, to minimize, very problematic things on social media and wondering what's happening in their therapy rooms, right? How is this manifesting itself when they're actually meeting with patients? And there have been a couple of movements of Jewish therapists or Jewish allied therapists to declare themselves and to basically say, I am a Jewish allied therapist, and to refer within that network. So it's very interesting. I had not worn a Magen David for my entire professional career. It didn't seem professional to me. And now it's a symbol, right? Like this is what you're going to get. You know, when we're working together. And I think there are, it's just on a practical level, ways to, you know, galvanize the movement of Jewish and Jewish allied or neutral, I'll say neutral or sympathetic or humanistic a therapist. Therapy in its most ideal should be the therapist should be processing their own countertransference. The therapist should be able to manage that, to be able to manage their political feelings, to put that aside, and exactly what Manya said, to see the humanity in their patients, right? This is not politics. This is human-to-human interaction. This is how this is making me feel. And I want to have faith or hope that most professionals can do that. Most professionals can look at countertransference and really see a countertransference, meaning their own attitudes towards what their patient is saying, and be able to reflect on it. There have also been a lot of training movements for professionals to understand trauma and to understand how to respond in the acute time period that we're in right now. And so most clinicians have a basic understanding of trauma, but this is something that is not really taught in schools. This level of trauma from all different sides. And there have been a lot of training initiatives to get clinicians more familiar with coping with trauma, and not just the trauma in Israel, but to, specifically anti-Semitism globally. And so there's reasons to be optimistic about what the field can do, and times to refer out, right? Times where this is just not going to work, and be able to identify a therapist that is able to work with the person properly.
Great. Thank you so much. The next question, and we will wrap up soon. But the next question I'm gonna give to Dr. Ticker. How do you deal with a college campus that is very sympathetic to Palestine and is telling the Jewish students their perspective is not as important? And I think from like the psychological perspective, I'd love to hear what you have to say, Dr. Ticker.
Yeah, I think in that example, and we've touched on this idea of feeling isolated, not feeling connected, feeling we have to hide who we are. And so again, if we are feeling like we can't be true to who we are, we don't have space or safe opportunity to process our experience, to be validated, to be seen, right? We don't need everyone to agree with us. We definitely will not have everyone agree with us, but we need to be seen. And I love that example of the Palestinian student and the Israeli student. I think that's beautiful. And so if that is a challenge for students to find that person, people, or community to feel safe, that therapy, to echo Dr. Rollhaus, can be a really wonderful place to have the opportunity to focus on you, to focus on your needs, and not have to ask the other person, well, what do you need now? How can I support you, right? I think in our world today, that reciprocity isn't, it's important in relationships, but therapy is really unique in that it can really focus on us. And so if you are finding yourself in a position of, I don't know who to turn to, of course, there's the Jewish organizations on campus. But again, from that mental health lens, I do encourage having that space in a mental health setting to put your thoughts together and create a plan to tap into the communities that you so deserve.
Great, thank you. Greg, I know you wanted to share something.
I'll just jump in real quick. One of the things that's happening on campuses, at least through some Hillels, is increased investment in mental health services, either partnerships with universities that have said, as they've hired more and more mental health service professionals, they've sort of said, we have identity needs. So we want therapists who look like our students and can respond to our students. Depending on how bold and enlightened the campus is, you may find those people. So we have several that have been coming to Wisconsin Hillel to do Tuesday processing sessions. Sometimes those are in groups of people who don't know each other. Sometimes they're one-on-one. And it's a different entree. It's essentially as if you're getting something private for students who normally don't feel like they're getting something private when they go to University Health Services. The other thing I would say is at Hillel International's website at hillel.org, under student resources, you can find links to resources in some states where Hillel and Jewish Federations of North America and Jewish Children's Services and organizations like that have partnered to make therapists either available at a discount or to create sort of a network of people to look for. So there are some tools available in which to find someone that you might be comfortable with that may or may not require insurance. But I think you're going to find variety across the country in this particular space.
Thank you. So in the interest of time, I'm going to, first I'm going to read just something that someone wrote in the Q&A that I think is really important. Someone wrote, as a political scientist, professor, and dean who works at a non-Jewish private university, and as an Orthodox Jew who wears a kippah on campus, I've been working round the clock to support our Jewish community on campus. My fear is that those of us who strongly identify as Jewish outside of the Jewish studies programs are ceding ground on academia. We have so many wonderful children and students. Instead of just demonizing academia, is there any chance we can encourage our children to go into academia so we can change the balance on campus? It is lonely being one of the only .D academic administrators in the US outside of Brandeis, YU, and Turo. So I think that's a really great point, and I commend you for writing that. And I think that's part of what we were trying to answer before about how do we make sure that our students, that our kids are safe. And so thank you for writing that. And then I want to kind of in that light, I want to finish by saying somebody asked what schools have been handling this well, and then gave examples of what that meant to them. That was immediately acknowledging October 7th and denouncing or not tolerating anti-Semitism. And I think I'm going to kind of take a stab in the dark here. I think chances are a lot of schools have been doing a lot of really great things. And I think that's really important to remember. And I would like to ask that we finish with Yael and Beth each sharing a story about something strong that happened and something supportive that happened to you on campus, if you can think of it.
I can start. So this is like an overall theme that's been happening. It's not specifically one event, but you really see the unity of, and I mentioned this a little bit in my speech, you really see the unity amongst all different sects of Judaism during this time, which is something that's very beautiful. My rabbi once said to me in seminary, when we were discussing anti-Semitism, he said, how could we even combat anti-Semitism when we don't even get along with each other? And that is something that is so true. I know all of us know about like Israeli society, how fragmented it was politically before all this occurred. And that's just one very, very beautiful thing to see going on campus, and gives us all like a lot of light and a lot of strength during this time. Like when one of us sees the other, no matter who it is, who we've met through all of these events that have gone on from that Hillel has presented since October 7th, if we see one person that we know from Hillel speaking to someone who's pro-Palestinian or arguing with them, then we'll just go up and we'll like help defend the Jewish person. So, which is really, really nice to see.
So I think something that really took me out of the darkness after October 7th on campus was the rally in DC. At Binghamton, we sent 200 students to the rally at DC in coach buses. We all got up, we left Binghamton at 6 o'clock in the morning to go to this rally together. And just the feeling of being around people who are like-minded, people who are experiencing the same thing as me, who are standing up against it, was an incredible feeling. The university posted all about it. They were all excited. There was so much unity between the Chabad, the Hillel, the JLIC, the Zionist organization. I have never seen such unity on campus between all different types of Jews. And then once we got to the rally, just the amazing unity that we saw there. I'm sure many people in the audience were at the rally too. Maybe I saw someone there. But just attending that, I think, gave a lot of us the strength and the power and motivation to go back to campus and know I'm not alone. I have the support. I have 300,000 people who agree with me, who are with me, who are behind me, who are experiencing very similar things to what I am. And I think from then on, the Jewish community really I don't know, burst forth kind of. And I saw more kippahs on campus, more skirts, more unity, more Magen Davids, more flyers up with just love and unity. And I saw more people like asking me questions about, hey, what do you think about a ceasefire? Or, hey, what's Israel actually trying to do with, this war? And I feel like since then, I've experienced a lot more people like seeing the love behind what's going on, which has been really helpful.
Awesome. Thank you. And so just with one final statement, I'm going to ask Manya, who I think a lot of people on this chat, on this webinar found a lot of positivity from you, Manya. So if you could close us out with a final positive thought.
So I really want to kind of bring a lot of the thoughts together that so many of us are sharing here. And no one on this conversation is denying the intensity, the struggles, the tools we need to navigate it, whether it's, the therapist, all the methods that we talked about, all the resources that are out there that your Chabads are providing, your Hillels are providing, that honestly, the Jewish community is rallying to provide for Jewish college students, truly like backing and understanding what they're carrying. But I think there's one thread that I noticed coming through this again and again, and I think Yael and Beth really just touched upon it. There is such a power to energy. Shared energy, negative shared energy just creates more toxicity and more like just this heavy cloud and burden that we're carrying. And positive energy breeds and creates more positive energy. And so when I see someone walk in who feels that they're carrying so much, and you see it physically, their face, their body expression, where they sit, who they sit with, and I can just look at someone else and say, hey, it looks like they're having a hard time. When we can surround each other with love, with unity, with positivity. As you touched upon the march, one student came back from the march. He said, Manya, this changed. We only sent 7 because they woke up at 3 a.m. I don't know, got back at 1 a.m. And we're traveling the entire time, right? So we're a little further. But when this young lady said, I've never been more exhausted in my life, but this changed my Jewish identity forever. So the power of sheer positive energy, of being a light, finding the light within you, sharing that light, it literally creates light, and the world needs more of your light. All of ours, everyone on this panel, everyone who's watching this, anyone who's going to tap into this message and watch the recording later, we are full of light. Let it shine forward. Acts of goodness and kindness with a smile to someone, help carry the burden. And what happens is when you're giving and you're doing and you're a source of light, you get full with it as well. So I just want to thank you for the opportunity. This was really eye-opening. Beth and Yael, God bless you both. You have a team of people around the world who are supporting you and all your your siblings in arms, wherever you are, in challenges and the struggles you are. And may we really enter a period of light with the era of Mashiach. That's what we're all moving towards. So it comes with all of us taking our step forward with positivity and goodness and kindness.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone, so much. I think this was a really productive conversation, very helpful. This will be recorded. This will be on YouTube at some point, hopefully in the next few days. And I put the link to JOWMA information on this chat. JOWMA, I didn't even introduce in the beginning. JOWMA stands for Jewish Orthodox Women in Medicine Association, and we are a team of women dedicated to supporting each other and providing outreach to our community. Thank you, everyone, so much, and it was really a pleasure.